All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second in a series of community conversations powered by the Committee of 70 in partnership with KYW News Radio. I'm so excited to be your host for this evening. My name is Cherri Gregg, and I am the Community Affairs Reporter for KYW News Radio. I want to welcome everybody to this community conversation. I hope you have your questions because we have a wonderful panel of experts. We'll be talking about mail-in balloting here in Pennsylvania. We'll also be talking about the 2020 census. Oh, did you forget? This is an election year and this is a census year. I know we've all been focused on the pandemic that we're fighting every single day, and shout out to all those on the front lines, and my condolences to anyone who has lost someone during this pandemic. But today is about WeVote, the Committee of 70's new initiative to change the culture of voting. So I want to give a couple seconds for all of you to tag a friend and to share this video and to have them join the conversation, to bring their questions. The countdown is on. If you haven't registered to vote, today is the last day. There's a lot of things going on that we want to be talking to you about to make sure that you are civically engaged. So again, tag a friend, share this video right now, and join the conversation. And I'm going to try to see who's in here and say welcome. We have quite a few people jumping right in. You guys are waiting for us. Thank you so much. And if you have questions, make sure you put them in the comments section because I will be reading our questions to our panelists live. How often do you get a chance to do that, right? So hello to everybody who's in our live right now. We appreciate you. Again, tag a friend and share this video. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome David Thornburgh. He is President and CEO of the Committee of 70 to provide more background on the WeVote campaign, as well as to give you your official welcome. Come on in, David.
Official welcome. Thank you, Cherri, and thank you also to KYW for this terrific partnership. And it's a real expression of your commitment to our community and as you said, to being civically engaged. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. We have three terrific community leaders joining us tonight to talk about the coming primary election on June 2nd. And I just wanted to take a second and talk about the WeVote initiative, which was launched about a month ago as an awareness campaign, trying to reach voters and doing everything we can to reach voters to make sure that they're prepared to vote on June 2nd and again on November 3rd. To say that this is an unusual election season is an understatement for the ages. Certainly the pandemic, the health crisis, the economic dislocations that all of us are going through are really just kind of mind-numbing. But to our way of thinking, that's all the more reason why it's important to step up and be counted, and when you're counted, to make sure that you vote, and as the virtual Volkswagen says in back of me, to make sure that your vote counts. And we'll be doing everything we can in forums like this to reach voters, again, to prepare to vote safely and securely on June 2nd. And I'll just end by saying we have a terrific set of resources on our website at wevote.70.org, where you can figure out the logistical questions about voting, where you vote, which is really going to be really important if you vote on in person on June 2nd. But we also strongly encourage you to vote by mail, which is a new ability that Representative McClinton and her colleagues in the legislature and the governor approved last fall. So a lot of folks have heard that message, but we still need to reach everyone in Philadelphia and everyone in Pennsylvania. So we're delighted to, again, work with KYW on this. And again, I look forward to this conversation, and back to you, Cherri.
Thank you so much, David. And I just want to put into your minds a couple of dates. May 18th, that's today. You have the rest of this evening to register to vote if you haven't done already. Again, you can go to wevote.70.org for all the details and information on how to do that. Also, May 26th, excuse me, it's the last day to register for your mail-in ballot. We'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. And so I want to say thank you to the dozens of folks who jumped in on this live in just a few moments. Again, share this video, tag a friend, and remember to post your questions in the comments because we will be posting them and providing the questions directly to our panel of experts today, and you'll be able to get answers real time. How often does that happen, y'all? How often does that happen? Use this. And so first up, I'm so excited to welcome State Representative Joanna McClinton to talk about the issue of mail-in balloting, so many things, elections. It's a lot going on. And if you don't know Joanna, she is the representative for the 191st Legislative District. She's also the first woman to serve in that district. So shout out to you, Joanna, and welcome to this community conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you, Cherri. Glad to be a part. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, David laid it out. I mean, he said it. COVID-19 has really disrupted this campaign season in so many ways. The type of GOTV, get out the vote work that would be done hasn't been able to be done. So tell us what you've learned about making connections with voters despite the pandemic.
So everyone who was working on this campaign season was planning to be done by now. So let's deal with that first. The primary in Pennsylvania is one of the later ones during a presidential year, and it was scheduled to be April 28th. But one of the first things we did in the legislature, when it was pretty clear that we needed to social distance, that we needed to be careful, that we didn't need to gather, and we weren't even clear on how quickly this would spread, was we changed the primary election date. We moved it from April 28th to June the 2nd right away. That's one of the first bills that we passed in March, sent it to the Senate, and Wolf signed it right away because we just wanted to be sure that once the time came for the primary election, people could do it safely. Now, fast forward or backtrack to last fall, we had no idea that we would be in an international pandemic in these unprecedented times. But for the first time, we changed the law in Pennsylvania, whereas before you could only apply for an absentee ballot under limited circumstances. We changed it so that now, even if you're at home and you're working from home, and you're sheltering in place, you can go online. You have until Saturday to do it, but even our Secretary of State is encouraging everyone, do it right away. Don't wait until the deadline. I applied for mine. It took 2 weeks to get my ballot. So you want to go ahead and apply to vote by mail right away. Because we've been in this pandemic and we've been sheltering, people who are on the ballot this year, they have had to find unique ways to connect with voters, to educate voters. I myself, I've been to the senior homes in my district, dropping off the paper mail-in ballots because everyone does not do votespa.com. It's not accessible for everybody. However, I've dropped off paper applications, going back to pick them up and to drive them to the city commissioner's office. Everybody wants to be safe, whether it's election day, which is important because your voice is heard, or whether it's some other thing.
Yeah, and so you've been busy. Of course, you've been masked up, right?
You know it. I'm in the house. I don't have one on now, but I have a pack. I mean, I said, stop buying masks. This is like your new shopping habit, getting a new mask. I have enough to last at least a full week.
Definitely. And that's what we're all doing as we social distance. So what are you finding as the messages that resonate with people when you do this? I'm sure you're on the phone too, because I've heard a lot of people on the phone. What are the messages that you are finding resonate with various communities?
So it depends on the demographic. When I'm talking about what I call my wisest neighbors, those would be the ones who are 62 and up. They want to ensure that since especially this is a presidential, that they do not miss even the primary election. It is very critical to them that they express how they feel and that they participate in the Pennsylvania primary. When I talked to younger voters, I had to remind them that the date changed from April 28th to June 2nd, and here's who's on the ballot and here's why. So everybody's demographic depends on how the message resonates to them in terms of an urgency. But here's something we all know. If you never paid attention to government before, with this pandemic and these constant press conferences, you are noticing who the governor is and who the leaders are, whether it's in the White House or whether it's in the State House, and how the decisions that we make affect everyday life. So people are woke, as the saying says, and I don't need the air quotes, but people are really woke now because they're seeing, well, hey, If my child works at a supermarket and is on the front line, why do they make $9 an hour? Should they be getting time and a half? So hazard pay, for instance, is one of the things that we've been voting on in Harrisburg, trying to make sure that folks who are on the front line are being compensated as such.
Yeah, so people are paying attention because there's a lot of messaging and media. I know that's what we're doing all day, is providing those press conferences. And so vote by mail. This is our first election, Joanna, doing the vote by mail, and people are nervous. Who's the demographic, first of all, that is being targeted here?
So everyone is being targeted. I've been explaining on my social media, yes, polling locations, although they'll be limited, they will be open. You'll still be able to walk into a polling location and vote like normally on June 2nd. But what you might not anticipate is that because so many locations are being consolidated, you may see a line. Now, we don't normally see lines in the primary, depending on where you live in Philly or on the other side of my district in Delaware County. That might not be the time you see a line around the building. So you might think, oh, I don't need a mail-in ballot. I'm going to go ahead and vote. I'm okay. I'm not sick. I've got my mask. I've got my sanitizer. But if you see a line of people waiting on June 2nd, you might have a second thought, like, well, wait a minute. How long is it going to take for me to get up there? So we have been targeting both wisest neighbors, seniors, because unfortunately they've been very vulnerable to this pandemic, but we are also targeting younger voters. I've seen some of my colleagues doing TikTok videos, trying to remind everybody that yes, you can vote by mail for the first time ever.
Yeah, and so you have some fresh statistics, hot off the press.
Yes, so getting ready for tonight, I reached out to the Department of State, and when I say recently, I mean after 5 o'clock. So these are really fresh numbers. I said, hey, this talk is coming up shortly. I need the latest numbers you have. And I wanted to know, well, how many people across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we're talking 12 million people, have signed up to vote by mail. And here are the numbers from our Secretary of State's office. 1.5 million applications statewide. 1.5 million. Here in the city of Philadelphia, 151,591. And in my legislative district, 2,430. And my mom is on the computer right now getting hers. So that's about to go to 2,431.
That's good. So, well, I have to say, I feel like Philadelphia should be higher. You know, I feel like Philadelphia, we're lagging. I want to put it out there. I did sign up for mine. This is the second week, so I haven't received it in the mail, but I did give an email. And we did talk about this in our past community conversation, but I just want to reiterate this. Could you talk about some of the safeties that are put in place? Because people are real nervous about putting their ballot in a mailbox and they don't know where it's going.
So this is a different thing in Pennsylvania. There are over 20 states across the country that vote by mail and have done so for years. In some ways, we're late to the game because we've only had excuse absentee ballots. So you had a special set of circumstances. So you should know there's a unique identifier on the mail that you receive from your local commissioner's office. So if you live in the Delaware County side of my district in Darby Borough, you are getting mail from the Delaware County Commissioner and media. They will mail you the ballot. Now, I live on the Philadelphia side of my district, so mine came from the county commissioners right downtown at City Hall. Once I opened it up, it's unique identifiers on the scan. When I looked at it, it took me way back, Cherri, to like grade school when you did the standardized test and you couldn't use your friends because it was certain dots that correlated to you. That is how it is. It is safe, it is secure. However, we don't want people to wait until the last minute because this is the first rollout in the Commonwealth. What we're encouraging you to do is don't wait until the 26th. Apply right now so that you have enough time to get it because people are concerned. Nobody wants to be disenfranchised. No one wants their voice to not be heard in any election. So do it early and know that it is safe, it is secure, it's going to the commissioners. That means no political party is able to swap it out the mailbox and take it to see how did you vote and do we want your vote or not. It goes straight to the county commissioner's office.
Yeah, and I understand. I did put my email in because by putting your email in, it gives you some level of calm and it quells some of those nerves. How does it do that?
Yes, so I put my email address in there as well. And as soon as I registered, not like within minutes when we're shopping on Amazon, but I mean within 24 hours, it said, "Hi, Joanna McClinton, you signed up to vote by mail. Expect your ballot." And then within 4 days, it said, "Hi, Joanna McClinton, the city commissioners of Philadelphia have received your request for a mail-in ballot. Your ballot will soon be mailed to you." So they've sent me multiple emails. And then once the mail came, I was relieved.
Yeah, and that's very cool. I want to shout out Frank Noranti. He applied for a mail-in ballot 3 weeks ago, received his on Friday. He filled it out and mailed it back today. Shout out to Frank. I'm gonna give you a
Good
little
job,
round of
Frank.
applause here. I hope you're telling a friend and telling family members as well. We want to get as many people as possible to register for those mail-in ballots. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And please tag a friend and share this video, because we want as many people as possible to have this critical information. And so so a lot of different types of people are applying. How do we use what we've learned to kind of up those numbers? Because we have a few more days that people can register and still get their ballots in time for the June 2nd primary date.
I encourage everyone to share it on your social media. The people who text you today, send them a text. Did you register to vote by mail? Hey, did you register to vote by mail? Just go to votespa.com. It is very simple. All you need to do is put in your ID or your driver's license number for Pennsylvania. For my shout out today, with it also being the last day to register to vote, I did a tribute to the class of 2020. I said, "Hey, class of 2020, are you registered to vote yet? You're 18, or you might be a little bit older. You might not just be graduated from high school. Well, are you registered to vote yet? We see all the drive-bys, we see the parades. I want to see you going to vote by mail, preferably, so we can continue to flatten the curve."
That's wonderful. And I want to shout out Viola. She just mailed her ballot back too. So thank you so much, Viola, for doing that. And I have to mention that this is also a census year. We have someone from Philly Counts 2020 here that's going to be talking in just a moment. But you were able to secure some cash for that.
Yes, so the federal government sent money to the state government in which neighborhood organizations could apply. And I was able to get $10,000 of a grant that went to ACANA. That stands for African Cultural Alliance of North America. And in Southwest Philly, some people may not have heard or known because you don't live in our area, but we have the largest population of African Caribbean immigrants in the state, in Southwest Philly and Lower Delaware County. So it's important that when we think of ambassadors, people who we trust, people who we know, we want to hear from messengers that are credible. And because so many people have a high level of distrust of the current administration, people are not sure whether the census information is going to be misaligned or used for bad or somehow used for some sort of a service depending upon your nationality or where you say you're from. So some people are really frightened to give information willingly to the government. And I did mine last Saturday, and they asked, who's in your household? What are their names? What are their dates of birth? And people look at those questions and say, well, what do you need to know all of that information for? So we got ACANA, that grant from Harrisburg. They're in Southwest Philly, and they are partnering with smaller nonprofits so that they can get the word out in the community. It is critically important that we have an accurate count, especially in communities that have historically been undercounted.
Wonderful. And I think this is a great transition. And I want to say thank you so much to you, State Representative Joanna McClinton. And I hope you'll stick around because there's opportunity after this for more Q&A. And thank you to everybody who's tuning in right now. Again, please leave your questions in our comment section. We'll be providing them to our panelists real time, and you get answers back. And if you did apply for your mail-in ballot, we'll shout you out too. So just let us know. And again, share this video and tag a friend. We want as many people to know about the upcoming June 2nd primary and ways to get your mail-in ballot. And again, check out WeVote.70.org. And so for our next panel, I'd like to say welcome to Andy Toy. He's Development and Communications Director for SEAMAAC, an organization that supports and serves immigrants and refugees and other politically, socially, and economically marginalized communities. Welcome, Andy. I'd also like to welcome Pedro Rodriguez, Director of Partnerships for Philly Counts 2020. The office was created by the City of Philadelphia to assist in making sure Philadelphia gets an accurate and fair count in the upcoming decennial census. Welcome, Andy and Pedro. Welcome to our community conversation.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone.
Yes, and so I want to put it out there that I did, Pedro, I did fill out my census, okay? I did it online. So nobody needs to come, you know what I'm saying? It has all been done. And if you filled out your census, we will shout you out. So let us know that as well. And so I want to start with you though. I know you guys have been working really hard to get people to fill out the census. What has it been like for you in this COVID-19 climate?
Thanks for that question. I mean, and thanks for Representative McClinton. We've done a couple of projects together as it relates to the census. We did the prison gerrymandering forum right before the pandemic lockdown happened. But it meant many of the organizations that we work with in the communities and our plans ourselves, we had to kind of quickly move to a different way of working, to continue to keep getting the message out, to continue to keep the engagement with the communities, and to keep the need for our residents in the city to understand that the census is important. And these two things, voting and census, got together. We need to have a count. We need to have a count, the total count, so we have fair representation both in Harrisburg and in Washington. You know, imagine if we don't count at least 60,000 people who live in the city of Philadelphia. That means that we will lose one seat in the state legislature. And there are communities that traditionally have not been counted for years and years and years. And those people are not on the data. And the census data is the only data that can be used to draw political lines, to do it for Washington, to do it for Harrisburg, and to do it for our own city council here in Philadelphia. We have 10 city council districts that are based on population. Those lines and those neighborhoods get created that way. But, you know, we had really a group of dedicated community organizations and individuals who just step up. It's a challenge that we have with the pandemic. People are thinking about something else. They have so many other things in their minds. But we have our dedicated volunteers and partners who immediately stepped in and began to say, okay, we're going to shift to a virtual type of work to get the message out. And for the last 6 weeks, one of the things that we have been doing is doing phone banking to the areas around the city that are not responding as well as we would like around the census. And we call in to remind them about the census, to check whether or not they have received their census data in the mail. We find many homes that did not receive anything, and then we give information and helping on how to access online or by phone. And some people, you know, say, you know, it's been on my table for the last few weeks. I'm glad you called because now I'm really going to do it right now. So that's some of the things that are happening. We also have combined our experience doing a lot of training with our Census Champion campaign that we had, which we trained more than 5,000 residents about the census. Okay, why don't we take that kind of same model and teach people about COVID-19 and what it is and where the resources are in Philadelphia. So we've been doing that every week, every Thursday, we do those training. So we now train thousands of people around the city with that information. And then they combine the two things as well. We call on people to talk about how they're doing with the pandemic, also remind them about the census. We're happy to have community groups like ACANA in Southwest Philly and SEAMAAC in South Philadelphia, who have been great partners in continuing to keep the message in and out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pedro. And I want to just shout out Johnny Shaw, who recently applied to vote by mail. Also, Lorraine Cuffey just mailed her ballot back as well. And so you guys have been really, really busy. And Joanna kind of kicked off this whole conversation, Andy, about reaching, this is a census year, but you got to reach people on multiple levels who are may not trust, may be distrustful or hard to reach because of language issues or whatever. What is CEAMAAC doing and other groups like yourselves that are sort of targeting these groups, especially in a pandemic time when everybody's inside?
Right. Well, before I answer that, I want to first thank Representative McClinton for being able to see the future of being able to understand that we would have this situation, the pandemic, because without mail-in voting right now, we'd be up the creek right now, really. It is really, really important that we have mail-in voting. So thank you very much for what the state's done. And then on the city level, they've put some real resources behind the census work. So I really appreciate that. And Pedro being one of the leaders of that, couldn't have a better leader in that work. In terms of the work that we've been doing, I think as far as both census and getting people to register to vote and to vote, people need to hear from trusted messengers. So places like Akana and CEAMAAC are known in the community, and our elected representatives and other folks, other leaders out there that are basically sending the same message. You need to be counted. We all need to be counted because it's worth, and Pedro can correct me on this, it's over $2,000 per person that we would actually receive in benefit from the federal government per year. Multiply that by 10 years by 50,000 people, you've got millions of dollars that we leave on the table if we don't count everyone. The other thing is, we also, before the pandemic hit, we actually had some door-to-door operations going, and we found that made a really big difference. The folks that we were able to have a conversation with or see actually did fill out their census. And by the way, it's only like 5 minutes. It's really, really, you all know that it's very, very simple. And it's meaningful. So it's important that we have a voice. So that's the census work. And by reaching people door to door, we actually did close the gap and actually made it, because we're in areas, so where CEAMAAC operates, a lot of the area is a low response area, with folks who are immigrants, low income, immigrants and refugees, people of color. So we've really had a concerted effort to reach the hard to reach people out there across the city. And that was the city's, the census, their focus was to find those areas where we know that we would have a hard time. Because in a lot of neighborhoods, people just fill it out. It's really simple and they go online. And the last thing I would say that I tell people is, do you really want somebody coming to your home and knocking on your door? You're much better off doing it online or through the mail before they start knocking on your door. Most people don't want somebody coming to their house, so just fill it out.
Yeah, I don't think people really knew that. And I don't think I knew that when I first started doing stories on the US Census. I'm like, oh, I just thought they just knocked on your door. They're like, no, that's if you did not respond. And
exactly, yeah.
Do that. Yeah.
And they actually, the door knocking, which is called the enumeration process, only reach about 10% of the people who did not respond. So that's when we start losing and missing out on people. And Andy mentioned the amount of dollars that do not come to Philadelphia if a person does not participate. That's $2,100 per person for 10 years. That's $21,000 for the decade that would not come to Philly. I mean, right now, based on the 2010 census, the city gets about $3.3 billion annually for federal programs that have a formula of allocating resources to municipalities of Philadelphia. Just one figure, according to NALEO, the National Association of Latino and Elected Officials, in 2010, 3,000 children in Philadelphia were not counted. Most of them children of African-American families, Asian and Latinos. That meant about $63 million that were left on the table. Money that could have gone to fund our school lunches, special education, to fix our streets and infrastructure, money for affordable housing, money for reimbursement rate for Medicaid and Medicare. So you name it. The funding for food stamp, which is called SNAP now, is tied up strictly to the total number of people who live in a community. Pell Grants for kids going to college is also tied up to that number of people who live in the municipality.
Wow. And I did have a follow-up for you, Pedro. I mean, how do you reach these communities? Because I know that there's been a lot of dollars spent on advertising, but what's cutting through?
One of the things is our partnerships with the community-based organizations. Like Andy was mentioning, that people in communities, there are certain institutions that they trust. They trust community of faith. They trust teachers. They trust the community organizations, nonprofits who are there day in, day out, providing services to them. So we partner with those organizations, and that's the root of our engagement. And it's been successful because what we train all those organizations and their staff and volunteers on how to talk about the census. Cherri, you mentioned the things that you did not know until you started covering the census. There are many things that people were not aware of. It was something that was just, you did it every 10 years, kind of a nerdy thing to do. But now it has a different meaning in this day and age. It is important for those trusted messengers to have the correct message. So when people go to them and ask questions, they have the correct responses. And that's why our Census Champion program was so successful in the sense that we equip thousands of Philadelphians to have the correct answer and be able to be asked those questions.
Yeah, and I want to shout out Kelly Green, who's filling out her ballot as she watches WeVote at home right now. Shout out to you, Kelly. Thank you so much. And shout out to Linda Poindexter, who just mailed in her ballot today. And so, Andy, I want to bring you back in here because language issues, but I know the census has been printed in multiple languages. How's that working out, especially with this pandemic? How are you building those bridges there?
Sure. Well, we've been sharing information in language. It's a lot harder now, of course. We were hoping to have our outreach office open so people could actually come in and work on our computer lab and actually just fill out the census online. Would have been really simple. It's a little harder right now because we can't open the office for people to come in, but I believe that they are extending the deadline. So maybe in a couple months, it'll get a little bit easier for us to have people even just socially distanced. So we've had a lot of information out there in language. We also have places like SEAMAAC actually have staff that are fluent in various languages, from Spanish to many of the multiple. In the case of South Philadelphia, it's just really, we have probably 15 languages that we cover at least. We say 19, I think, actually, but that's the kind of outreach that you need to be able to reach people, and also their children, other people in the family that might be better English speakers, so that as we reach people in schools and other places, it's just multiple places where we're reaching people and through various media. So they say you should be touched 7 times before you actually decide on something. We hope that we've reached people 7 different ways in this process.
Yeah, and I think, I just want to follow up with you, Andy, because I think a big part of this is there was a lot of scare within immigrant communities early on in the process before the census even kicked off. What's the temperature now, and are people filling out the census?
Yeah, I think, there's some people that probably still remember that some folks tried to, I'm not going to name any names, but there was some effort to put a question about your citizenship on the census, and that is unnecessary. And we fought that. Many organizations did not believe that was a good idea, and it actually would have had a chilling effect on people filling out the census. We try to explain to people that the census is definitely a separate entity than a lot of the other parts of federal government, so that they are not allowed to share information. And Pedro would know it's like 67 years or something before they actually are able to release the census information, the individual census information they collect from that year. And we also, by the way, we have 2 dedicated census workers that speak a number of different languages. So we've been really pushing out there and making sure that people see a face that they feel comfortable with and trust. Yeah, it's unfortunate that they even tried to raise that issue, but it's a good thing that we undid it, the citizenship question.
And that's a good question, if I may, in terms of the information collected in the census is protected by the Constitution. It could not be shared with any other type of government, neither local, federal, or state, not with immigration, not with the police, not with the courts. And actually, the individual information that is collected in your 2020 census will be made public in the year 2092. It's 72 years rule. I don't know about you all, but I expect to be dead. Actually, I'm planning on that by that time.
All right, 72 years. That is quite a long time from now. And so
We'll
I want
find
to
out
talk
about you, Pedro.
yeah, I want to talk about the timeline. Pedro, I want you to lay that out for us because things got shifted around a little bit because of the pandemic. So what does it look like? What does a ground game look like? Is there going to be a ground game for the census?
Well, the Census Bureau is definitely planning to have a ground game. They have extended right now until the end of August for the self-response rate. They're beginning to call people back in, the people that they offer jobs to do census takers. They're going to do some training, and they're still going to be doing some hiring for some places around the city of Philadelphia that they still need census enumerators. So I think they're moving along as as if things are going to somehow return to some degree of operability. They have additionally asked Congress to extend the deadline until October 31st. But we have been messaging to the people in Philadelphia and to our community partners that despite all of those postponements in terms of dates and timeline that they had, that the time to do this census is now. If you have an opportunity to do it, and I think we all have an opportunity to do it, is to do it online or do it by telephone. There's also that additional asset there that people can do their census using their cell phones, a tablet, a computer, a laptop, or they can dial the phone number for the census and do it that way. That will save a lot of time, a lot of money, and it'll be one less house that a census taker has to go and knock on that door.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that that message is there.
Yeah. And
I just meant to add one quick thing, that we are continuing to do our phone banking and texting at the same time. So we haven't stopped, but we will take a little pause actually to make sure that we're doing getting out the vote on Tuesday, election day. There are some, there's an overlap of all this work. So we are, and by the way, we are incorporating both our census work and our election work, encouraging people to vote, nonpartisan, of course, through our food distribution and other things that we're doing. So we're giving people information when they come to pick up food from our food bank. Basically, we're making sure that people understand that there's still things happening and they should be aware of and should be following through.
Wonderful. And I want to shout out Susan Mullen Fury. She applied for her ballot, waiting for it to arrive. And also Linda Poindexter. She did fill out her census over a month ago. So shout out to you. If you other folks who are in our live right now, you can put up a hand and say, I filled out my census too. We'd like to know that. Thank you so much for doing that. And so we do have a question from our live, and they say, how are you getting that message out? And Andy, you mentioned food banking, texting, food banks. That is a food bank. That is a thing. Food banking, phone banking, and text messaging. And I got text messages. I know I've gotten them. And so, are there other ways you're getting the message out to the masses?
I think it's really hard right now, it's person to person, but as much as we are able to see people, yes. We also have our social media that we're working through. We reach a lot of people that way, and I'm sure both Pedro and Representative McClinton also reach a lot of people that way, and David as well. We are all reaching out and making sure that we're encouraging people and letting them know how important it is. I think that's critical.
Yeah. And did you want to add anything, Pedro, about how Philly counts is, I know we mentioned phone banking, texting, using food banks as an opportunity. Are there other strategies as well?
Actually, there were thousands of census material that were added to some of the food packages for distribution that the city was coordinating with many community-based organizations throughout the city. There were some nice brochures that the Free Library had made. And there's a lot of this posters, you see that in 3 different languages. There's also social media. You can follow our activities, the hashtag Philly Counts, or that hashtag 2020 census as it relates to some of the activities that are going on. Also, I just want to get a little bit of information. So if you participate in Zoom meetings on Fridays, there are a lot of other people I've seen. You can get some of this swag. We can get that to you so you can wear with you. We also have available Philly Count bags that you can wear. You can see that. You also get one of these lovely shirts. Okay. So if you want to get one of those, if you are participating in Zoom meetings on Fridays, it's Dressed Down Census Fridays, you can sign up to get some of this. You can pick it up. It's contactless picked up at our office, 1500 JFK on Thursdays. And you can sign up by going to phila.gov/census.
phila.gov/census for some swag. Don't you just love swag? I love a good t-shirt and a hat. I think I got a really cool coffee mug or something from you guys early. They probably gone, y'all, so don't even get yourself all excited about that. But I want to say, so I want to bring Andy and Pedro in for one last question before we open it up to the entire panel. I mean, what do you think? I mean, we're going through a lot here with the COVID-19 crisis, right? But is there a silver lining? Are we learning something new about how to engage people, how to get people to take action that we're going to take forward with us past this pandemic?
Well, there are a lot of things that we're doing differently right now. I would also say, I want to mention that SEAMAAC was part of a lawsuit. Unfortunately, we just lost on Friday, which was to try to extend the date at which people's ballots could be accepted. So right now, if you send your ballot in by mail and you postmark it, let's say Friday before the Tuesday election, if it doesn't get into the office by that Tuesday, it actually won't count. We had tried to push that forward with the Public Interest Law Center to like the end of the week. The date was set, and other folks in the state, there are some people that don't want as many people voting as we do. We want everybody to vote. And I know Representative McClinton is totally with us on that, but there are some people that feel like, not everybody should have an easy time of voting. That's sort of how we feel. And we want to make it easier, but so we're really pushing people to make sure if you're gonna put your ballot in, you gotta get it in. Like if you're gonna mail it in, you should mail it in the week before, like many days before if possible. Don't wait till the last minute for any of this stuff. And we're learning right now from what we're doing now in the primary for what's going to happen in the fall. We have concerns, for example, of elders being able to vote. If they didn't already apply for mail-in voting, their polling place might be a mile away. How are you going to get them to go? So we're trying to set up car sharing. So these are things that we're learning and we're trying to figure out as we go. And I think we're going to learn a lot from this election. This is the first really big mail-in election that we've had, and the first, of course, election ever, like where we had social distancing and fewer polling places, which will mean more crowds perhaps. So we're taking all that into account, and we're trying to figure out ways in which we can help people to get to the polling place if they have to go. But first of all, they should try to do mail-in vote, mail-in ballots, but you have to get in right now. You have to apply right now. We sent out, and one other thing I'll mention, we sent out in language on Friday, we sent out some test mailings to show in language to let people know that they should apply for their mail-in ballots, and we have information about the ballots in language. We'll have it in about 10 languages soon, so that people can really understand why is it, who am I voting for? What is it that I'm voting about? And why should I apply? How do I apply early? And how do I get my ballot in? Where do I send it? All those things that are super important to being a good citizen. So we really want to encourage everybody to do that. So we're learning a lot as we go right now.
Wonderful. And so what about for Census, Pedro, are you guys learning anything that you're going to take back with you 10 years from now?
Yeah, actually, it has been an amazing opportunity for many organizations to kind of review how they operate and how they are maintain contact with their constituents, with supporters and volunteers. And many smaller community organizations were reluctant to embrace technology. So I think they have been forced to do so now. There are ways to do effective engagement with community residents and with the members of an organization. And over the years, people have been a little bit kind of slow on adapting those new technologies. You have lists of members in separate sheets and so on. When you can have that automated and easier for you to send out newsletters, to make phone calls, to send out texts, to send out emails. So we are helping many of those organizations to adopt these new technologies so they can build the capacity. It also expanded their understanding on how eager people are to engage in helping other people. I think this pandemic has shown us in Philadelphia that, one, that we are a very resilient community, and two, that people are very compassionate and very willing to help out. I am really surprised at the number of people who actually come out and they basically virtually knock on your door and say, I want to help, what can I do? And many of the organizations are finding the same thing. But I think the organizations have to be very proactive on getting the message out, like, we are open for business in a different way. And we'd love to have you engage with us.
Wonderful. And I just want to make sure that people who are in this live do share this video, tag a friend. All of us in Pennsylvania and beyond need to this information about mail-in balloting, about the 2020 census. That's nationwide, y'all. And so tag a friend, share this video. And I want to bring Joanna back in this conversation because you've probably learned quite a bit about campaigning because of the pandemic. Any new things you're going to take with you?
Absolutely. I think that when we've traditionally relied on the ability to knock on doors and hold rallies as a way to get out the vote, and we're seeing the world is shut down and you cannot have a large gathering to get people excited to vote, you tend to find some new creative juices and ways to reach people. I know for myself, I've never been a big Facebook Liver, but I can count on more than one hand the number of these types of interactions I've had in the last few weeks so that I can get the word out, so that I can let everybody know, like, every election's important. And although this one was postponed, the dates are now coming and we're running out of time tonight to register. And of course, this weekend wrapping up to be able to get your mail-in ballot. So I think that this process has taught every candidate that we don't have to be in a box to get our message to voters. There are other ways to galvanize support. There might be a Zoom call. There might be more than a robocall. And we used to do things like motorcades and, oh, honk your horn, we're coming to vote. But now, people are alarmed. They're on edge. We've all been in trauma because we're living in a way where we can't hug our loved ones and see them. So we're seeing other ways to just be innovative, but to also let people know this election is urgent and we need every voice to be heard.
Wonderful. And if you have any final questions to our audience, please post them in the comments. And one question is, what measures is Pennsylvania, what measures are PA taking to prevent missing mail-in ballots? This person, Viola, says she's read stories about post offices in other states finding ballots after the deadline, and Annie touched on that. What is being done? Joanna, and I'm throwing it at you.
Absolutely. That is a question of concern. In addition to the emails that we've talked about and the points of contact to know that, your ballot is received, once your ballot is mailed off, there's nothing to check off. So that is a situation that we're quite honestly monitoring for the very first time. It's a little bit different where it's not like something we could scan at home and send back and it'd be done, because we have to also then put our safety and security into the United States Postal Service, or some people who are going to deliver their ballot to the county commissioner's offices with their limited office hours they now have. We have another level of trust, and I don't want to say we're waiting for an incident to occur to then see how to remedy it, but that's how a lot of the best legislation comes out of Harrisburg. Something happens, and then either there's a lawsuit, or we, who are lawmakers, get back to the Capitol and say, hey, we hadn't foreseen that circumstance. How can we prevent it in November and every election going forward?
Yeah, and I think you just teed up the perfect question. Oh, you had something to add, Andy?
Well, yeah, I think our understanding is that there will be a way to track your ballot once it's in the system, and I'm not really sure exactly how that's going to work, but that's what I'm told, and that's what we've heard. The other thing is you can always deliver your ballot directly, and that's another way to avoid any, like if it's like 3 days before the election, you shouldn't be mailing it, right? That's just not smart. So we're going to try to get more information from the city commissioners to make sure we know, are there places where you can drop your ballot days before the election, a couple days before the election, so that you feel safe, you're not in a big crowd, you don't have to go to the polling place where there may be a lot of people, and it's easy for you to get to, hopefully. And I think that the only issue is that we cannot do that. So there's a law that we're not allowed to, a third party cannot deliver the ballots for the people that are voting. So they need to do that themselves. We can give them a ride maybe, but they have to deliver it themselves. So that's a specific rule for the ballots. I just also want to say that we've been using text messaging, because the other good thing that we did before the pandemic, we were doing a lot of registering of young voters, high school seniors and college young people. And we were using tablets, and they actually can opt in and give their cell numbers. And so we can do like texting and say, do you know where your polling place is? Do you know that tomorrow is election day? Please vote. And we found that that's super, super effective in getting people out to the polls or to vote. So we will continue to do that.
Well, thank you, Andy. And I want to ask Pedro, go right ahead, Joanna. You had
I just wanted to add, I did look that up, and you are totally correct, Andy. If you go to votespa.com and put in your name and your address, you are able to track the status of when it was sent to you, but also whether or not it was received. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And lots of information available at votespa.com. Also, WeVote.70.org. And we're getting close to wrapping up, but I want to just sort of like look forward. And Pedro, I want to start with you. Like, what data points would you be looking at? What would need to happen for you all to look back and be like, you know what? We had a very successful, census time, and because I like to think positively here. So what would need to happen, and what data points would you need to see to say, you know what, this was pretty good despite everything we went through?
That's a really good question, and it has a number of answers to that. Obviously, you're going to be looking at the self-response rate for the entire city, what that would look like when everything is wrapped up and done. So to be as close as we can to getting a fair and accurate count of everybody who lives in Philadelphia, regardless of legal status, regardless of anything else. The second thing is, I think we're looking at the number of people who have engaged in this process. I think as government, we have kind of really put to a test whether or not you can engage community residents in a way that is transparent, that is respectful, that shows dignity in consideration for whatever institution exists in the community, and that you elevate that. And you elevate the quality of that interaction. And I think we have been able to kind of be getting there in terms of how we have worked and how we have engaged thousands of people. People come up with ideas about what we should be doing. We listen to what's working and not working. We in constant communication with them in many ways. So the pandemic has also forced us to kind of have all avenues of communication and engagement open and explore and activate it. And then another level would be is, were we able to help community organizations and communities to have a better civic infrastructure so they can use it for the future moving on? The census is every 10 years. Are we going to be better prepared for the next census in 2030 because of the work that we have done and began now, and that community groups can build on that? And that also translates into many other areas of our civic engagement throughout the city. So there are a couple of metrics there, and we're looking at the communities who are so-called hard to count, which we say that community traditional not counted, are the same communities that are being deeply impacted by COVID. That is happening in those communities as well. In the same community that had the problems of the poverty and these other socioeconomic conditions. So reaching out and touching base with those communities in a way that is really meaningful to them and to us, I think will also be another key to success.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull Joanna here before I let Andy come back, because you wrote a op-ed about the very thing, Joanna, that Pedro was talking about, how a lot of these at-risk communities have been pointed out, and now is the time, right? So what metrics do you think the state you would look at to say, you know what, this mail-in balloting, this census was successful, and we're going to take these techniques with us to the future?
So I think very quickly we'll be able to gauge the level of participation for voting. We'll be able to see that in the next 2 weeks to come. How many people voted? How many people participated? What's the feedback? Because certainly my district office has been ringing off the hook with, can you get me one? And it's like, no, the laws of the House don't permit me to get you one, but here are the instructions. So we're giving everybody the instructions on how they can get their own mail-in ballot. But as it really relates to those statistics that Pedro was just referencing, I did write an op-ed that was picked up on last Friday that this pandemic has shown a light on issues we have always combated as communities of color and communities where the incomes are not as high. My legislative district, for instance, it consists of many hard-working families. But despite that, we have 30% deep poverty just in the district. So that means that many of my neighbors are below the federal poverty guidelines. And that suggests that you likely don't have access to great health care, that your children may not regularly see a pediatrician or a dentist. And sadly, those are the same tenets that somehow put our children in a pipeline to prison. So we are now, since this light is being shown on the inequities, saying, hey, sound the alarm. Now's the time for the alarm to be sounded that we eliminate these inequities. When people were calling for healthcare for all, we wanted to put a political label on that. Oh, you want everybody to have healthcare? But now that we're in a pandemic and some people sadly on the front line are getting sick, they're seeing like, no, everybody does need to be able to access equitable healthcare here in this United States of America. It shouldn't be a right for some, and then the rest of you, good luck with your health. Good luck, best wishes. It shouldn't be that way, Cherri.
Yeah, and it's funny because it is the same people who are hard to reach for the census, are the same people who are impacted by COVID-19, but they're the same people who could participate in mail-in balloting and vote on June 2nd and then again in November and really have a huge impact. And so, Andy, bringing you back in here, you work with many of those populations. How would you, if we fast forward, how would you look back and say, you know what, our GOTV worked, our census, fill out the census worked? What would you need to see?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for asking that question, Cherri, because a lot of us need to keep our eye on the ball, eye on the prize of metrics. Like, what are we really accomplishing? We need to be able to measure it and understand what really works and what might not work as well. So I think we can measure actually, and we have, of the people that we register, we know if they're voting or not. We can actually get to that data. which is nice to show that our work is making a difference. We don't care which way they're voting, as long as they're voting and having a voice. And that's, as a nonprofit, that you know, we're nonpartisan. But that's one metric that we have. We have a metric of how many people we can register. And unfortunately, we were doing really well. We had 351 people registered before the primary as of like yesterday. But I don't think we're doing as well this year because of the schools just completely, you know, vacated, and that was part of our effort. So those numbers may not be as high as we would hope, but there are things that we can measure, and you're right. And the census information actually is something we were measuring, and apparently we are doing, and Pedro, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are actually making a difference in that. The organizations that are on the ground right now, that we're seeing the numbers that are much greater than what they would have been had we not been there. So that we can be proud of, but we're still trying to get 100 to 100% of both people filling out the census, people registering to vote who are able to register to vote, and of those people, making sure that they come out to vote. And I'd just like to say that they need to see what's in their interest, right? It has to be what's in it for me to vote. And sometimes it's about just being an active, engaged citizen. Like the park, you want improvements in your park, you should vote. So we're using our work across the whole spectrum to make sure that people understand that their vote is their voice in terms of resources and what happens in their neighborhood.
Amazing stuff. And yeah, I'm always about how we know we won, how we know we did it right, how we know we still have work to do. And so I just want to commend all of you for your ground game, despite everything that's going on. And as we wrap this up, I want to shout out, because folks are like, civic infrastructure, we love it. Let's build on the work, because all of this is all intertwined, right? All of it's intertwined. And so as we wrap this community conversation up, I want each of you to take a minute or so and just lay out any final statements, provide any websites or resources that you'd like people to have. And Andy, since you're already up here, we'll go ahead and let you do that. And we'll close out with Pedro for this one.
In terms of websites and resources,
and final words.
Yeah. I don't have it in front of me. I apologize.
Okay, you can just send it to us and we'll make sure we post it on the link.
But I would just encourage everybody to be engaged and understand that their vote is their voice. Their census being counted is part of being a good citizen. And when you're not, you're letting somebody else do it for you.
All right. Anything for you, Joanna?
Absolutely. Since we've been on this conversation, I got more numbers. Allegheny County is leading the state with vote by mail applications. They're at 206,000. So Philadelphia County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, I'm challenging all of the surrounding counties to get in our mail-in ballot applications, get them returned on time, let your voice be heard on June the 2nd, also be counted in the census. And finally, because we're all dealing with this in different ways, if you need any assistance, my legislative district office is here as your liaison to Harrisburg. Maybe you haven't heard back from the Department of Labor with unemployment. We have a liaison. Give me a call at 215-748-6712. That's 215-748-6712. I shared this to my representative page. So if you've already liked that page, you have our office information. But let us help you get through this pandemic together. Thank you so much, Cherri.
Thank you so much. And final word, all talk about Philly counts. Pedro, you're up.
Thank you so much, and thanks for this opportunity. To everybody who's watching and listening, the census is really key to our future for the next decade, and we're all in it together. We all count individually, but we all add up. And if you want to volunteer, if you want to join it, if you belong to an organization that wants to help out, go to phila.gov/census, and we'll be able to get back to you and then plug you in. I mean, we can use anything, any way that you can, either making phone calls, using your social media account to amplify our message of hashtag Philly Counts, and to help out in the back end as soon as anything that you can contribute, we welcome your contribution. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I just want to say, I'll be voting. I hope you'll be voting, because it's all about WeVote, right? Which is the initiative by the Committee of 70. Please check out all their resources, including a tool that helps you create your own ballot that you can use right at your kitchen table. This year for the new mail-in balloting, we hope you all participate in the June 2nd primary. You can check that out at wevote.70.org. And I just want to say thank you so much to our amazing panel, Pennsylvania Representative Joanna McClinton, Andy Toy, and Pedro Rodriguez. And of course, shout out to David Thornburgh, President and CEO of the Committee of 70. And I'm Cherri Gregg from KYW News Radio. All of this has been powered in partnership between KYW News Radio and Committee of 70. Don't forget, if you are not registered to vote, you still have time. Go to votespa.com and do it today. And remember, apply now for your mail-in ballot. You have until the 26th, but do it today. Okay, do it as soon as possible. Don't wait till the last minute. And of course, show up and be ready for June 2nd. And have a wonderful night. And thank you so much for being here, everybody.